Hey, it's your general, Joshua David Ling. Just letting you know before this podcast begins that TK and I were working on Discord, and for whatever reason, it was extremely laggy compared to some of the other podcasts I've done. But we worked through it, and I was able to edit it down to where a lot of the awkward pauses are taken out. As a result, it might sound a little disjointed at times, but just go with it because I think there's a lot of really good value in this episode. Also, if you'd like to sponsor Poets at War in exchange for an audio advertisement, you can get in contact with me at joshuadavidling.com. And today's episode is sponsored by the following. Imagine countless worlds before you. Fantasy and science fiction tales. Heroes charging gallantly into battle, heedless of win or fail. Upon the ancient steps of glory, a battle for time must be won. Join the characters from every realm as they seek the words, "Well done." Audio Adventures Podcast by Joshua David Ling, full of epic poetry, sure to make your heart sing. If you like listening to Rob Inglis read The Lord of the Rings, or Andrew Peterson read his Wingfeather Saga, you'll love Audio Adventures by Joshua David Ling. Visit joshuadavidling.com/audioadventures to listen.
Today on Poets at War, we talk to author and all-around geek T.K. Wilson about Disney, redeemed nature, and many more things including homeschooled siblings. You are now entering the war zone. This is Poets at War.
Church was nutty yesterday because we had like a multi-church potluck thing, and Pastor was flying. He condensed about an hour-long sermon into about 10 or 15 minutes.
That sounds about right. What was it on?
It was on prayer, and he had a little, prayer acrostic outline thingy. The old, I've never heard it before, but I guess it's been around for a while, the Rice prayer setup.
Okay. I've not heard of that either.
Might have been more of a bigger church thing, or might be south of us, south of New York anyway, because he was in Long Island. He's from Long Island. He's got the most hilarious accent.
Oh, yeah.
And then he moved to Florida and had a church there, and then he moved back here to take over our church. One time, he came over to our house to pick up something, and he said, "We might have snow later." He goes, "Get out of here!" And I'm like, he actually said it. He said the thing.
Yeah, I have some folks around here that I am confounded and amazed by their southern accent, depending on the situation. But there's such a... And I know there is in New York, too. There's a myriad of southern accents, but then there's certain things that people say that you're like, oh my goodness. One that immediately jumps to mind is my old football coach. He was actually the guitarist for Jerry Lee Lewis. Like that, yes, that Great Balls of Fire, Jerry Lee Lewis. Yeah, he's since passed on, but he was our football coach, and he homeschool high school team, and he had all kinds of ridiculous phrases, but one of the number one phrase, your little southernisms, right? All these goofy little Irish phrases that came down through the Scots-Irish, into the Appalachian way of talking. The one that always hit me the hardest and just made the team just straight up roll is one of our guys dropped the ball and he said, "Boy, take them gloves off. Them's as slipperier than rabbit snot." We were rolling. It was spectacular. So yeah, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to the listeners of Poets of War and just give them a little background of your many different talents and areas of expertise and even just hobby.
Okay, so hi there. My name is Tamara Wilson. I am writing under the handle of TK Wilson, and I am a writer of fantasy and urban fantasy and a lot of nonfiction as well. I was homeschooled all my life, graduated college before online college was cool. So yeah, pre-COVID people.
Oh yeah.
And I write, I sew, I crochet, collect and repair dolls, collect and repair books. One of my big minor hobbies right now is collecting up various children's books and movies and other media that might be canceled at some point. So yes, I've been keeping my eye on the Dr. Seuss market.
Yeah, that's a good idea. That's an interesting area because people don't tend to think about intellectual property in terms of market value and stock market and that sort of a thing, and various copies being worth anything. That's kind of just like, oh yeah, like whatever. That's one of the reasons why, you know, with my writing and the things that I do, even if I'm not publishing, the thing that I'm telling people is I'm laying up intellectual property for my children on down the line. I will publish. I am working toward all of that, you know, and everything else. And publishing is always something that I do online, always. But it's just one of those things. People don't think of intellectual property as property, you know?
Exactly. That's another big thing is that's one of my big hobby horses is artists keeping their rights because of a certain incident that happened back in 2008. Nobody really knew about it until 2019, where there was a massive fire at Universal Studios or Hollywood that completely destroyed a backlog of artists' work. We're talking like Ella Fitzgerald and Louis Armstrong, Boris Karloff. Everything went up. Everything was gone.
Was that also the Muppet fire? Because I know that the Muppets had a giant fire, destroyed basically everything from Muppet Treasure Island and most of the 90s movies puppets.
No, I don't think so, but that explains a couple of things. I had never heard that before. So, that's on Disney right there. Ooh, the big mouse.
Yep.
And nobody knew. They didn't say anything. They tried to cover it up until somebody at the New York Times got wind of it. And I'm actually in contact with Sarah Karloff, Boris Karloff's daughter. And I wrote to her, and she had no idea. She had no clue that her father's work had been destroyed.
Wow. That's crazy. That's crazy.
So that is one thing that I am death on, is that artists keep a hold of everything, every scrap of paper, every lyric. Even if you don't use it, put it away somewhere, because you never know what's going to happen.
That's one of the reasons, you know, you don't depend on cloud, but cloud as a backup is extremely valuable and helpful in many cases for this sort of a thing. You know, I have most of my stuff backed up on multiple clouds, you know, it's like, let's go.
Absolutely. I have a lot of my stuff and the IP of artists that I respect that's in the public domain backed up on thumb drives. And I keep that right by my bed in case something happens. And I can just grab it and go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we had a fire when I was 10, and I'm like, okay, everything important needs to be kept within reach in case of fire.
We brought up Universal Studios. We brought up Disney a little bit there. I know you and I are huge fans of old school Disney, particularly of Renaissance and the Golden Age and things of that nature. One of the things that people constantly go at with Disney is obviously the follow your heart. We talked about that with Sarah Levesque a little bit, and the sequence is sanctification, then follow your heart because it's been sanctified. And that's what it should be for the Christian. That's something that a lot of people don't look into. How has Disney affected you, just not just in like an entertainment value kind of way, but how has it influenced your work? How has it influenced the way you think? You know, that sort of a thing. Just the I guess the philosophy of Disney and where it's wrong, where it's right, and how it's affected your life and your work.
An excellent question. Well, first off, like you know already, I was a huge Disney kid. I mean, I still have a lot of Disney memorabilia in my room, despite how I feel about them now. But Disney affected my work a huge amount. Even little, like, piddly things they threw in their TV shows. Like, Rodon from Tree Man of Roses was inspired by this one throwaway character that never talked about again in the Aladdin TV show. I ran across a fan art of him and like, holy cow, I forgot he existed. And they're like, hey! So that got me started with that. And that's how we met. So you could say that we met through Disney.
Yeah, that's true. We did. We were talking about stuff on Fellowship and Fairy Dust, right? That's where we first met?
Yep, that's where we first met. Yeah, Disney and the Disney princesses were a huge influence on my life. I mean, for a long time when I was a teenager, before that, I was a very weird kid. I was very much into that whole follow your heart enchanted thing, and that everything was going to work out perfectly because Smile in a song, and it doesn't work that way. The real world doesn't work that way. And for a while there, I really disliked a lot of the Disney princesses. Number one, because I felt sort of betrayed, but also because I absorbed a lot of feminist lies about who they are and what they're like. You know, like Snow White, you know, she's the passive, la 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 la. But I realized when I got older how tough she actually was to maintain her optimism throughout being, you know, a slave, being driven from her house, being driven into the woods to depend on the kindness of 7 strange little men. She had to be pretty tough. So it's just not the same kind of tough as, like, say, Esmeralda or Jasmine. So I took all of that, and for a while, in my writing, I felt like I need to be a bit more serious, like Harry Potter. And I'm like, after a while, I was like, this isn't me. I really want to write something more whimsical, something more like what I grew up on. The stories of Disney and Don Bluth and all those like animated musical type of things, only better because I'm not focusing on the follow your heart thing. Because that's the part that really bothers me, is that even after you're sanctified, after you become a Christian, you still have sinful tendencies. You still have to be careful about how much you listen to what your own feelings tell you.
Yeah, I was listening to actually, I believe it was Cross Politic. They did a show in which they were talking about this, and one of the big points that was brought up by I believe it was actually it wasn't Cross Politic, it was Bigfoot Revival, another show entirely. Anyway, they were talking about this idea that the same thing we're talking about, the follow your heart being flawed, all of that kind of thing. And one of the things that was really pointed out to me was this idea that they kind of take the Comfortable Lie song, which is one of those things that doesn't get talked about a lot, but essentially it's Hakuna Matata, it's Let It Go, it's a lot of these songs that, you know, even Bare Necessities would fit into this category. They take the comfortable lie, the simple, you know, lie that you don't have to be on your quest doing your thing, and being vigilant and growing up and all these other ideas, and they make that the most fun song, and the thing that when you cut it out of the entire narrative, you start to think of it as something that is actually good in and of itself, and it's not within the context of the story. And I think that's one of the biggest flaws, even artistically, in a Disney movie, usually, is this idea that this comfortable lie comes out of context and people start experiencing it as a positive instead of a negative, even though it's a negative within the construct of the story.
Exactly.
I have a tough Disney lyrics quiz that I actually put together for you. It's only 7 questions. You want to go for it?
I will.
Okay, cool. So there are 7 questions here, and we're going to start with these are lyrics from a movie, and you have to guess the movie. They are multiple choice, okay?
All right.
All right, first one. You douse and you souse, rub and you scrub, you sputter and splash all over the tub. Is it Snow White, Cinderella, The Rescuers, or The Great Mouse Detective?
That one is Snow White.
Well done. Next. A wax mustache and a beaver coat, a pony cart and a billy goat. The Great Mouse Detective, Oliver and Company, Pinocchio, or Melody Time?
I'm going to go with Pinocchio on that one.
That is correct. I'm lost at sea without a friend. This journey, will it ever end? Bambi, Pinocchio, The Rescuers, or The Rescuers Down Under?
Rescuers.
Okay. You are 3 for 3. A warm handshake or two, good friends always do. The Three Caballeros, Saludos Amigos, Ichabod and Mr. Toad, or Oliver and Company?
I'm going to go with Three Caballeros.
Okay, we'll do Three Caballeros. I think it tells us at the end, actually, on those. Okay, so you followed me, I followed you. We were like each other's shadows for a while. Now, as you see, this game is through, so although it hurts, I'll try to smile. Is it Peter Pan, Make My Music, The Great Mouse Detective, or The Rescuers?
Great Mouse Detective.
Okay. Unrivaled, unruffled, I'm beauty unleashed. Oliver and Company, Melody Time, The Rescuers, Bedknobs and Broomsticks.
Oliver and Company.
Okay. Last one. Where life is twice as easy, where the crickets you don't hear in the city keep a hummin' in your ear, oh so pretty. Is it Fun and Fancy Free, Ichabod and Mr. Toad, Princess and the Frog, or Robin Hood?
I'm going to go with Princess and the Frog. I really haven't seen Princess and the Frog, but...
You missed 2. I know that... I'm going to look up specifically which ones are what. But I know you missed Three Caballeros, and I'm pretty sure the last one you missed. So let me see here. Then, okay, that was actually Fun and Fancy Free, the last one.
Ah, okay. I've never seen Fun and Fancy Free, so...
Okay, well, there you go. And then the other one was, yes, instead of Three Caballeros, it was Saludos Amigos. So you were real close. But yeah, that's...
Oh, yes, that was the compilation film they were all in together.
That's the hardest one that I've been able to come up with. I love this super obscure. Yep, I love that those super obscure Disney lyric quizzes and things. And every time I do one, they're never obscure enough for me. So the one that you heard was specifically Fun and Fancy Free. That was from the Lazy Countryside from the short Bongo. Bongo the
okay.
Bear. But anyway. So yeah, that was fun. That was a little different. I thought I'd try it since we both love Disney. You're one of the only people who I could even hope would get a majority of them, and you did. So yay. So yeah, we're dealing with a major Disney queen right here, ladies and gentlemen. So, what is it you want to talk about? I mean, you've got so many different things that you can talk about with your work. I want to hear about what you want to talk about. We've got Tree Man of Roses, which I know you've been working on. We've got your doll business. We've got, your basically all your different resale and restore businesses that you run. You're just a busy little bee, and I'm always intrigued by everything you're doing, and I really want people to go check out your stuff. So talk about what you do and why you're into it.
Okay, so as far as my writing goes, there were a whole ton of problems that I was working out with Tree Man of Roses that I was like, okay, I need to take a break and do something different. So what I ended up doing was I actually ended up rewriting it in short story form. Rather than an entire novel, I decided to start kind of paring it down and doing it in installments on a website called ReadZ. And that ended up giving me the little creative boost I needed to get through editing and paring it down and getting back to know my characters again, because it all got kind of lost in what I wanted to do with them. because I had so many ideas. I was bouncing from here to there, from project to project, and it just got very overwhelming. Even though I was excited for all of them, I was like, I can't do this, work on this. I have to finish this one first and this one first. And I was like, oh, I'm just tired. My brain was tired. And then doing it in short form really helped to remind me what exactly I'm doing here, what exactly I want to do here, what exactly my purpose was. And it wasn't, to compete with J.K. Rowling or anybody else, because that was a thing that I had in my mind. That was one thing that had always been in my mind, is I want to compete with J.K. Rowling because she doesn't deserve what she's gotten. Admittedly, stupid. She's worked just as hard as anybody else. I may not like her as a person, but she's worked just as hard as anyone else. And I lost sight of what God had put these stories in my life for. These stories and these characters are there for a reason, and it's not for competing with anyone else. It's for His glory and not mine, and not to compete with anyone else. So I'm currently in the process of editing my original short stories from ReadZ. I chose 5 to start out with, and I hope to have the for sale on Amazon no later than the 12th day of Christmas 2022.
Sweet. That sounds great. So, with that being said, how are your stories bringing honor to God as far as you're hoping? I mean, obviously, one of the big things, and I do not want people to lose sight of this, is the idea that your stories are, if they bring you money, they are actually, as a Christian, that gives you more ability to build even other things for the kingdom of Christ, build your own business, feed your family, all that other kind of stuff. So, I don't want to put any lower emphasis on that. I think that's one of the greatest reasons to create art in the first place. But in your themes, in your tones, and all that other kind of stuff, what are you attacking with these stories, or defending with these stories? How are you perpetuating beauty in the world through your themes and your characters and such?
Yes, that is one thing that I do love to think about, is that I want people to understand the value and beauty of nature as part of God's creation. That's why the Dryads are there, is that they represent a sort of redeemed nature, like the song She Waits from, is it the Grey Havens?
It is the Grey Havens.
Okay, good. Phew. I almost said Mumford and Sons.
Definitely not Mumford and Sons.
No. I want them to be a picture of redeemed nature, and that's why witches and wizards hate them so much, is because they represent the loss of nature, in that they could control it, but they can't anymore. And when it comes to the elves and the pixies and other creatures like that, they are also part of the redeemed nature. Their purpose is to protect and defend nature in particular, and humans that come into their paths as their friends, from evil.
I gotcha. That makes sense. So what about them dolls? What about what's so great about fixing dolls and selling them?
Well, it started out when I was a kid, actually. I mean, I had friends who... We're not talking about Sid here. We're not talking about kids like Sid that were blowing up crap. My mother wouldn't have let us interact with kids who did so. But they kind of treated their toys like they were, like nothing. They would leave them outside to get moldy and stuff like that, and I'm like, if my mom found out I did that, she'd kick my butt. Yeah. Because one thing that our parents taught us was to respect each other, respect each other's belongings, respect other people's belongings, including their property. I would see people, throwing out, like, American Girl dolls, and I'm like, are you kidding me? Are you freaking kidding me? So, what I do is I grab, if they're missing limbs or something like that, I can't fix that. But I grab what I can if they're just dirty, or their hair is a mess, or they're in some way flawed, but other people could use them, other kids could play with them. Because there's no sense to me in throwing out something that could still be enjoyed by other people, even if you don't want it. So I grab them, and I fix them up, and I resell them, or I give them away.
Now, you and your brother also work together on various things. I know that he's drawn for you, and you've helped with his writing as well. You guys are sort of, I don't know how to say it, in my particular Facebook group that most of us in these first couple episodes know each other from, you're almost like the Laurel and Hardy of a group. I don't know who's who, but there's this constant back and forth sibling thing, which I'm always a huge fan of. And just like, I guess creatively, and kindly speak to how, you guys with two very different personalities work together to create art, and just compare that to how God, uses this sort of thing in art, this kind of friction between people that love each other to make something beautiful.
Well, that also started out when we were kids. Well, you see, Ian and I were the only homeschoolers in the neighborhood. So most of the day we didn't have anybody else to play with. And even then we only had a couple of friends in the neighborhood because it wasn't exactly a very nice town at that time. It's better now. We've driven through there on various trips, and it's hugely improved, and I'm like, where was this, 10 years ago? But we were also really the only kids in town who were in our area of town, anyway, our street, who were interested in actually creating the books and cartoons and whatnot. And I'm not throwing any stones on anybody else. Some of these kids I haven't even seen since I moved out of town. But we were the only people we only had really each other. Also, our dad was in the military, so that also made us weird, because we could be gone at any time, really. It was the 90s, so anytime that there was any kind of conflict, there was always, in Haiti, Bosnia, there was some kind of debacle across the sea going on all the time in the 90s. So anytime there was that, there was a possibility that we could be stationed somewhere else. And my parents bought a house to make sure we'd have somewhere to go back to when Dad was done.
Yep. My Casey, my wife's father, not Casey's my wife. Her father was in Army during Gulf War, all that other kind of stuff, and similar kind of situation for her. I find that military families tend to almost be like homeschooled families almost by default, because there's a certain amount of isolation. Mm-hmm. There's definitely kids that they tend to develop slightly deeper relationships within their family as compared to the rest of the world, and their friends and the people around them, because they could just up and go. And that's something that I've always found interesting about military families and homeschool families, especially when they go together. With that being said, I think I totally understand y'all's relationship that way. I always did things with my siblings, and you actually remember, because you used to watch me and my siblings, the sibling productions on YouTube. You were watching the Sissy reviews back in the day. Yes. And it's so funny. We found out years later when we met each other on Fellowship and Fairy Dust that you were a fan of me and my sister's YouTube channel. Back, we were doing this probably, I'd say about 2008 through 2012 or so. And you were a huge fan of us there.
I know, that was crazy. Small world.
Do you remember, how you found our YouTube channel?
I do not. I think it might have had something to do with My Little Pony Friendship is Magic or the movie Bartok the Magnificent, because I remember there were references to both of those things in the one video that I remember seeing clearly enough.
Yep, some of those are still on YouTube if anyone wants to look up Sissy reviews,
And-
but go ahead. I don't have access to that channel anymore. It just kind of floats now.
That's probably okay considering the changes YouTube has had to make. Though some of them were a long time in coming, and I approve of them heartily. Like the whole COPPA thing. As much as I realize it is a pain, it also protects kids, and I'm all for that.
Yeah, COPPA's a weird thing. You know, I think it's implemented and executed horribly on YouTube. I do think something needed to be done, but it's just a whole other weird thing. Because, like, some of the stuff that I do, being rhyming,
Oh, yeah.
thankfully they haven't implemented a whole lot of automatic flagging. But basically, you know, if they ever decided to do it, my stuff would almost immediately come under review because it rhymes. But that does not mean that Beowulf,
Oh, yeah.
you know, and things of that nature and that violence level are anywhere near kid friendly.
Exactly. Yeah, they need to make sure that if and when they implement automatic flagging, it's a little bit more sensitive than just, you know, flagging something because it's animated or because it's this, that, or the other thing, because you know as well as I do that not all animation is for children.
Oh, definitely not. Yeah, animation is... that's a funny business in and of itself. I'm actually going to have on in a couple days or weeks or something. I have him booked. A guy who is making a Disney-style animated movie. His name's Chad Lewis, and he's doing some really cool stuff with that. Doing well, I'll let him talk about it when he gets to it. But it's a Hans Christian Andersen related thing. Also, yours truly might be doing some voices for it, so that would be really cool.
Ooh.
So we'll see how that goes. And yeah, so
That would be really cool.
what else do you want to talk about? This is pretty much open for you to preach your gun-ho whatever and whatever else. You know, I've gone through most of my questions and ideas I had for topics, so what do you have?
Well, I didn't finish talking about my collaboration with Ian, so...
Get to it.
So, another thing about that was that Mom and Dad taught us that when it comes right down to it, all we have is each other, and that's not that is used sometimes in some families as like a negative thing to incur guilt. But in our case, it was the simple fact of the matter is that when it came right down to the wire, all we had was one another. So that is a philosophy that Ian and I have carried forward into adulthood. And when we were kids, we worked together on various, you know, little fan comics and whatnot. That most of them we still have around the house someplace. And we just grew up working together like it was normal. And sometimes we drive each other absolutely insane.
Yeah.
Absolutely freaking nuts.
Oh, yes. Very insane.
But-
I know how that goes.
You have more than one sibling, so...
Yes, I'm the oldest of 5, so I'm very much there, and I think I drove a lot of the creativity out of all of the others in their adult life, which is unfortunate. They have their own creativities or whatever else, and I'm not saying that they aren't creative at all, but I was always the one kind of bringing them all together to, you know, Avengers Assemble, and you know, after a while they found their own thing, which is awesome, which is really awesome. I'm really proud of all of them, honestly, and they're all creative in their own amazing way. I'm very proud of my family for that reason. So, okay, sounds good. Where can people find you online?
You can find my business at La Rose Rouge, Vintage Toys and Repair. Right now I have a picture of a bunch of Disney Princess dolls in front of a fold-out Disney Princess castle. You can't miss it. I do not have a Facebook page for my writing as yet. I should probably do that, but you can find me on Twitter as at TKWilsonAuthor1, and my Twitter handle is White Rose Princess.
Well, everyone, remember, if you are a Christian, you are part of this culture war. You are a soldier in God's army, and you need to go out and fight to return truth, beauty, and goodness to this world. We appreciate you listening, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye. God of song, said the warrior bard, though all the world betray thee, one sword at least thy right shall guard, one faithful harp shall pray.